By 1997, Jean Marlowe had founded the Grassroots Association for Medical Marijuana and new activists around the country. She had heard about a farm in Switzerland called Switco that was sending medical-grade cannabis to patients in the U.S. They were acting under the belief that various UN treaties guaranteed the right of a patient to bring a 3-month supply of over-the-counter medications across the borders.
I had every legal right to import this medicine, especially since the United States government, in the Single Convention Treaty, they promise, the 21st sentence, they promise to make it available for their citizens, and they don't do it. So they shouldn't care that we make it available where it's safe and effective medicine for ourselves, and it's affordable.
As the local sheriff had still not honored the court order to return Jean's grow lights, she still had no source of clean and properly cured cannabis, so Jean took Switco up on its offer.
So I imported some medicine, and Customs found it, well, the National Guard found it, and turned it into Customs, and I was arrested for it. And now I'm facing federal prison time over it, because when I went to the federal jury, to a federal jury trial, the judge, federal judge in Statesville, his name was Judge Lacey Thornburg, denied me my constitutional right to a medical necessity defense. Wouldn't let me have any of the medical argument, wouldn't let me present any of my medical evidence, any of my medical testimony. So I was left with no defense.
It took the jury 15 minutes to convict Jean Marlowe on 3 counts: conspiracy to import marijuana, possession and distribution of marijuana, a charge that Jean herself incurred by admitting that she gave cannabis to other patients in need.
It left me basically devastated. If you look at my record now, I'm no different than a common criminal or some kind of drug dealer for having tried to ease my suffering the only way I knew how, in a way that I thought was legal, to where I wouldn't have to go to the black market to get an inferior, dirty product that I need for medicine. So I exercise my rights under the Constitution of the United States as a citizen, as a human being, entitled to human and civil rights. And I'm prosecuted like I'm just any drug dealer on the streets. That hurts me worse than anything, that they consider me a criminal for easing my pain. I don't understand this.
Switco sent many packages of medical marijuana all across America. U.S. Customs even admits seeing one package go to South Carolina the same day that Jean's package went to North Carolina. Yet Jean is the only patient who has been subjected to federal prosecution. Why did the federal government single Jean out? Was it her activism? Was it the way that she and her husband Steve educated their whole community and won over the local media? Did her successful lawsuit against the county for the return of her property cause the federal government to view her as a threat? More on that later. Jean Marlowe was convicted on June 8, 1998. She was informed that sentencing would be in 30 to 60 days, and that if she tested positive for cannabis, her bond would be revoked, and she would be jailed pending sentencing.
It kept going on and on and on, and by August, when I still hadn't been sentenced or was told they didn't have any idea, I began to get the idea that I was testing positive every time I was tested it, every month, and I began to get the idea that I felt like that I was going to have to go to jail. I got a letter in October that my bond had been, I was going to a bond hearing. They were going to revoke my bond. And I went to a hearing on November the 9th.
In attendance at the bond hearing were 2 medical marijuana patients that received cannabis from the U.S. government. The government's Compassionate IND program, formed as a result of a lawsuit in 1978, at one time served as many as 14 patients. President George Bush closed the program in 1991 when thousands of AIDS patients applied. At present, only 8 remain on the program. Robert Randall, the original plaintiff in 1979, was present at the bond hearing. Though he did not get to speak, his presence and status was noted by the judge. Also, there was Elfie Musica, who controls her glaucoma with cannabis, legally.
Regardless of what the doctor said, the prosecution was determined. They had to see for themselves exactly what would happen. So they put me in jail.
The judge ruled that Jean would be held until sentencing at the Buncombe County Detention Facility in Asheville. He assured her family and friends that she would be provided adequate medical care. This was not to be the case.
But the truth is, they've had her for 2 days in a little hole, thrown up in a crack, not able to reach out her mouth. She's having severe back pain and trembles, and it's not right because the federal judge said they would monitor her regularly, take care of her health needs.
She was incarcerated and really was very uncomfortable for 3 or 4 days with nausea and vomiting and unable to eat. Certainly part of it of being upset of being incarcerated, but also not having available use of the cannabis.
After Jean's doctor visited the U.S. Marshal's office on November 12th, Jean Marlowe was moved that night. Her husband wouldn't know until the next morning that Jean had been moved to the Burke County Jail 40 miles east of Asheville in Morganton.
Such a small matter as this, they have made into such a huge thing that they call it a drug war, and they lock people up every day and take them away from their families and their children. They're breaking up homes this way. Jean, in here, she has a daughter and she has a family, and we miss her, and home is not a home without her. And we just hope that somehow that people will stand up and shout out to the heavens that this is wrong and it can no longer go on in a country that's supposed to be free and believe in compassion and what's right.
Jean Marlowe's sentencing hearing was scheduled for November 24th. She was receiving better care at the Burke County facility, but her liver enzymes were rising and the liver itself was swelling.
Medical personnel at the local jail was persuaded to start Marlowe, which is a synthetic THC, which did, after a day or two, relieve symptoms and really made a significant difference so that she wasn't nauseated and was able to eat. One of the problems that's occurring is that, and this is known with Marlowe, that it has an effect on the function of the liver.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, who were following Jean's case with great interest, contacted Joe Bundy, a specialist in federal appellate law. He recognized the precedent-setting potential of Jean's situation and said he would be at the sentencing hearing. Medical marijuana activists and others concerned with basic human rights became worried about Jean's condition in jail. The constant pain, the muscle spasms, and liver trauma were bad enough from just 2 weeks. What if the federal government sentenced Jean to 8 months in prison? A real possibility.
Phone calls. They just kept coming in. They came from everywhere in the country. They just won't know who to call and call. We had people, a councilman from California calling, offering to let her come there to live and be protected there. The governor's office was saying, please don't have people call me, you're tying up the phone lines and shutting them down, and we can't do nothing, no way. But I really believe that we educated the governor's office, the DA's office, the congressman's office, because people called from all through this community and this state and all across this country. It was shocking at the phone calls I received, and I think many more called the officials that was involved in this case.
Federal District Judge Lacey Thornburg convened Jean Marlowe's sentencing hearing on November 24th, 1998 in Asheville, North Carolina.
When I was getting ready to be sentenced, the probation office decided that normally due to my medical condition, they would recommend a downward departure. But due to the fact that I continued to exercise my rights to free speech and advocate for the legalization of marijuana as a medicine, that they wouldn't do that. So not only was I being punished for trying to save my life with a natural nerve, I was being punished again by the probation office
for exercising my rights to free speech.